Okay, I don't need to remind you then.
You don't, but I know you were ready to. So first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to this, our first webinar in this course. Again, I apologize for last week in terms of having to delay this, but here we are now. And as I mentioned in my email, this will be a double session where we'll be focused on the content both from Lesson 1 and Lesson 2, which I'm presuming at this point everyone has absorbed, both the video and the related written material. Now, one of the main purposes of the webinar, of course, is the ability to ask questions, and people should not be shy about this. This is a course for beginners in Jiminy, so there's no such thing as a bad question. And if you have a question, if there's something we're speaking about that you don't follow, or there's something that you've read and absorbed about the Jiminy principles that you don't understand, please ask questions about this. Some of you have emailed me questions, and I'll be covering these during the webinar itself. Again, for those who have just joined us, I teach in what's called the Socratic style, meaning I will be displaying charts at some point in the webinar, and I'll be posing questions. I like to make the webinar very interactive. I just don't like to be the only one presenting here. So again, don't be shy about responding, and don't be worried about whether your response is correct or not. We're all beginners here. And we like to be interactive, and that, I think, it makes it more enjoyable and more lively for all of us. Okay? And so Lesson 1 was, of course, covering all the fundamental concepts of the Jiminy system. Okay? And so what I'd like to just briefly do is to pull up that document. I'm going to share my screen here. But I'm not seeing the document I thought I would see. Hold on one moment here. Everyone should see a document that says Jiminy's Charadasha now, correct? Did someone confirm you're seeing this?
Yes. I'm seeing it. Yep. I'm seeing it.
Okay. But that's not the document I want to be sharing. Here it is. Now you're seeing one that says, a title page that says Distinctive Features of Jiminy Jyotish, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now the first thing you were introduced to with regards to Jiminy concepts, it's probably one of the most key Jiminy concepts, is the idea of special karakas. So the first thing I want to ask, is anything unclear about what was outlined here about the 7 karakas? Now, someone asked me the question and wanted to confirm that when we're evaluating the idea of father, that the special karaka associated with that is actually the BK, right? Planet with the 3rd highest degrees. But of course, you've also become aware that when we're doing Jiminy, we're also using stira karakas, that is natural karakas, of which, of course, natural karaka for father is the sun. But the first thing I want to ask is if anyone has any questions about the special karakas. The thing to understand is that they don't just represent the word that can be translated, they represent all the significations of the house they're associated with. Therefore, the PK, planet with the 5th highest degree, doesn't just indicate children, it indicates all the significations of the 5th house, which of course would include things like vidya, knowledge, mantra, also authorship, right? And everything you can, creativity, everything you associate with the 5th house. Is there anything unclear about that? Is there any question people want to ask about that?
Mark?
Yes?
I have a question. This is Wendy. This is very clear what you laid out, but on my software, using the 7 indicators as you suggested, I find that very relevant. However, I do notice that I get the PIK and the PK, and I'm having a hard time distinguishing which is which.
Okay, so in the 8th karaka system, which we're not using here.
Oh, so that falls in the 8th karaka system.
In the 8th karaka system, that is, so we're not even considering that.
Oh, okay, all right, so then I won't worry. I wasn't sure if it comes under the 8th karaka system. It does.
It does. It does. We're using the 7 carcass system, in which case the planet with the 5th highest degree is designated as the PK. Good,
Okay, that's all right, thank you.
Good clarification. Anybody else has a question about caracas before we move on?
Yeah, Mark. Clarification I was looking for. It was clear what you were saying about the father. It was in the text, but in your box there, it uses 6th highest, the GK, is indicator of relation. In the body of the text, it talks more about 6th house elements, enemies and obstacles and things. But when it comes to relation, what relation is it talking about? I take it it's not family relation.
Talk about relatives like cousins, aunts, and uncles.
But not father and mother. Those are covered by the other
Not
houses.
primary family relationships.
Right. And how did the father get associated with BK, given that that's more brother, as opposed to, say, the 9th, which obviously doesn't exist in a 7 system?
Right. So it's a very good question, Michael, because it's not logic. Doesn't seem logical, right?
Right.
Although obviously, every house system is an axis, like the 3-9 axis is an axis, right? It's not just the 3rd house, not just the 9th house. It's an axis. And the answer to that question is that it was Kay and Rao's empirical research.
Okay.
And really, that's the only answer to that. But my own experience has verified that it can be used in that way.
Okay, thanks.
But there's no, you might say, logical basis from that standpoint. Okay, any other questions before we go on here?
Yeah, I have one more. Can you just define, I understand these are the caracas, but can you just give some linguistic definition, like chara, caracas versus other? What does that represent?
It's confusing because of the Sanskrit, right? So
Yeah.
Karaka just means indicator of, okay?
Uh-huh.
Karaka means, chara means changing.
Okay.
And these karakas change from chart to chart, depending upon, which plane, what degrees. Stira karakas, the other word is fixed indicators, right? Stira karakas, mother is always the moon. Father is always the sun. Younger siblings are always Mars. It goes like that. They're fixed for any chart. Now, we've equated these special karakas to the first 7 houses of the horoscope. So one of the questions I had when I first studied with Kay and Rao was, what about the other houses? What about, and the answer was, well, this is when you're using the natural significators of these houses. So the natural significator for older siblings is Jupiter, right? And so on. These are good questions. Anything else?
Mark, I have a question. So some of the charts I see have an exclamation mark next to the AK and K. Is there any meaning to it?
In Sri Jyoti Star,
even in your material.
They have no significance.
Okay, thank you.
The developer of that program is a follower of the 8 Karaka system because they studied with another teacher, and I think they included that for some reason. But no, it has no interpretive significance.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I would like to clarify about the 6th Karaka. So we read that it's related to the 6th house as well, right?
Right.
But the 6th house is enemies, not relations. So does it indicate that the relations could be enemies?
No, hold on. Hold on. Again, every house has many significations, right? And so, and that Karaka embodies all of them. And those can be both have a positive meaning, or it could have a negative meaning, okay? So it can be both. It's not either or. Now, the word yati literally means relatives, okay? Literally mean relatives, which is why we're designating it as the GK. But it carries all the significations of the 6th house, which can be illness, which can be enemies, which can be injuries, which can be weapons, which can be medical therapies. It can be so many things, right? But it embodies those significations. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Another question, please.
I have a question, Mark.
Okay.
Do the carcass change in the divisional charts, or do they stay fixed? For every divisional chart, do you find the one with the highest degree, the lowest degree, or?
No. See, well, planets in divisional charts have no degrees. Okay? Planets in divisional charts have no degrees. They're a mathematical derivation, right? Can people still hear me?
Okay. Okay.
Can people hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Hello?
I can't hear you.
You're actually very.
I'm sorry, can people hear me?
Yeah, I can hear now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, we were just breaking.
Okay, so that's unfortunate. So the answer is any karaka remains that karaka in the divisional chart.
Good.
Okay?
Good. Just to confirm.
Yep.
Mark, I have a question about divisional versus, could you explain the relationship with the karaka versus the divisional karaka?
Not at this point. That's a question down the road. Okay.
Okay.
So just bear, right now we're just focused on the Rashi. And we are going to be looking at divisional charts when we're looking at time events such as marriage and childbirth. Right? But right now we're just focused on the Rashi. Anything else on karakas before we go on?
Yes, I had one. So what's a good software that you recommend for looking at this? I think the one I'm using includes Rahu as a karaka, so I'm not finding any option to disable that.
Okay, well, the premier programs on Jyotish are either Sri Jyotish Star, Rashtra's Light, or a software called Kala. Now, there is a free software available that can give you all the information you need, including 7 karakas, called Jagannath Hora. In my next group email, I'll send out a link to that. Mm-hmm.
Right, that's the one I actually tried using, but I believe that includes Rahu as well.
It does, but I believe it has an option for using 7 karakas.
Okay, I just need to dig deeper and find.
I believe it does. I don't use that software. I'm not sure, but I believe it does.
Okay,
Other
thank you.
questions before we move on here?
Can I just ask one question?
You can always ask a question.
It's still about the father. I understand why it is the third, but I was just wondering, when this system was devised in Parashara Hora, so the BPHS, did Parashara say that there were 7 or 8 karakas or a mix of both?
Well, first of all, the Jaimini system that's given in Parashara Hora comes from the Jaimini Sutras. Right? Parashara Hora is a compendium. And those chapters having to do with the Jaimini system were incorporated. The original source, bear in mind, is the Jaimini Sutras. And, the confusion arises because even in the Jaimini Sutras, the word va is used, 7 or 8. I just want to be clear that K and Rao method, which I'm teaching you here, is 7 karakas strictly, which, in my 23 years of experience, works very well.
Okay.
That's all I can say. All right, what else?
Mark, I'm curious, what software do you use?
I use Sri Jyotish Star.
Okay.
I believe it's the premier program in the world. But
Okay, I have that. All right, thank you.
So I gave a number of intriguing examples of how, sometimes events in Jaimini can show up very elegantly, very simply. We're going to be seeing more of that, but it's not always so. That's the thing you have to understand. Okay, it's not always so. Sometimes it's much more complicated than that, and sometimes the simplicity doesn't play itself out. So we'll talk about that. So it should be clear that in the Jaimini system, sign equals house. Does anybody have any questions about the aspects? Again, this should be rather straightforward. Anything about the aspects? This takes some getting used to if you've been doing the Parashari system, right? Remember, when we're doing Jaimini, we're using sign aspects, Rashi Drishti only. Okay? Rashi Drishti only. That's the thing to keep in mind. So there shouldn't really be any questions about aspects, but if there is, go ahead, ask me.
I have a question about aspects. So in case there is an exchange between two signs, how does that play out in aspects? Does that mean, say, there is a exchange between, like, you have Mars here in Aries?
This is an excellent question. I know your question. This is an excellent question.
Yeah.
Do those planets then become strongly connected? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
They may not be in Rashi Drishti, but if they're exchanging, those two planets, and therefore whatever karakas they are,
Okay.
become very strongly connected.
Okay, but do they start aspecting other planets more? Let's say, like, some planet was not Rashi before, but exchange happened, and so they are, like, in each other's sign. Does that change, like, other aspects as well?
No.
No?
I mean, any planet involved in an exchange, you would then also see if it's getting Rashi Drishti or making a Rashi Drishti with any other planets. It doesn't mean that the planet that's the other planet that's involved in an exchange with it is also in an aspect with those planets.
It doesn't.
It's each one individually.
Okay. Okay.
I actually want to clarify, Mark. That's something that I've been wanting to. If two planets exchange signs, and the planet that moves into the other sign by exchange, does it receive in the new sign? Does it receive the aspect? All those other. I don't know how to explain that.
Well, because this question is coming up, I think it can be better answered by looking at an example. Okay. And one of the charts I was going to be looking at today is the chart of the famous basketball player Stephen Curry. Okay? Stephen Curry, for those of you who don't know, he's a very famous professional basketball player in the U.S. He's an all-star. His team has won 3 championships in the last 3 or 4 years. He's the scoring champion. He's a very, very successful basketball player. Okay? So which planets exchange here in this chart? Anybody see
Jupiter and Mars.
Okay, we have an exchange between Jupiter and Mars. Everyone see that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So now, Jupiter, one of the planets that's involved in the exchange, is with Venus, but then also received the Rashi Drishti of which planets? Which planets also aspect Jupiter? Rashi Drishti.
Mercury and Rahu.
And who else?
Moon.
Ketu.
Ketu. So Aries is a cardinal sign, a movable sign, so you look for planets in the fixed signs, except for the one next to it, Taurus. Folks, you have to mute your mic if you're not speaking. We're getting a lot of background noise. And so in this case, Jupiter is receiving the Rashi Drishti of Mercury, Rahu, and Ketu. The planet that Jupiter exchanges with, which is Mars, does not receive those aspects. Now let's look at the other side. Mars. What Rashi Drishti does it make with anyone?
The sun.
The sun, because these are dual Rashis, right? All dual Rashis, planets in them aspect each other. So the sun is making the mutual Rashi Drishti with Mars and Saturn and Sagittarius. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Yes, that's clear. So
Okay. Folks, again, if you're moving around or adjusting your computer and you have your microphone on, we're going to hear it. So please mute your mic, Maria, if you're making noise. Okay. So going back to my document here, what we were focused on. So if there's no more questions about aspects, we'll move on to the concept that confuses everyone.
Mark?
Yes?
Sorry, I did have one aspect question, and that is if, say, all the planets are in the fixed or movable signs, and you're evaluating a period that is, say, in a dual sign, and there are no planets in the dual sign, up till now, the examples have all been triggering planets within the signs. If there are no planets, you still go through that period. How do you evaluate that period?
Right. I think you sent me this question, Michael, and
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I will make a comment now, and then I'll address it further when we actually look at an example chart where that's the
Okay.
case.
Okay, that's
So
fine.
my preliminary, if there are no, well, first of all, just like with any, there's always a planet that rules the sign, right? There's always the planet that rules the sign. So looking at the overall condition, disposition, placement of this planet when you're running that period becomes relevant for interpretation. But then, of course, you know, think of those 7 steps that were outlined for using all Rashi dashas. One at the end, but one of the most important is to then use that as a lagna, see the disposition and patterning of the chart from there, right? Which houses get emphasized, where karakas fall, right? If there's yogas, where do those yogas appear in which houses? We'll see all this.
Okay,
But
thanks.
that's my preliminary answer. All right. So now we come to Argala, the concept that tends to confuse everyone. And we'll have a lot of questions about this. Now, the first thing you should understand is that Argala is another way in which a sign, which becomes a house, of course, gets influenced by planets. There's 3 ways in which a sign or a house gets influenced by planets. The first way is occupation, easiest thing to see, planets in a sign. The second way is through Rashi Dristi, aspect of planets onto that sign. And then the third way is through this thing called Argala or planetary intervention. What's the difference between aspects and planetary intervention? Well, first of all, aspects can never be obstructed. Whenever a planet aspects a house, it aspects a house. It has that influence, right? But of course, we've learned that in the case of Argala, that influence can be negated. That is, it can be obstructed. And the influence is slightly different in the sense that, you know, and I can't really explain it any better than I've explained it here in the writing, so I would have you review that again, is that it helps preserve, lock down, enhance whatever the results are of that particular Rashi sign. Now we'll see when we get into Jaimini Raja Yogas that one of the primary ways in which Argala is used is to qualify Raja Yogas or any kind of yogas. Any kind of yoga, any kind of planet forming a Jaimini Yoga, if it also has Argala, any kind of Argala, right, that would be considered a good thing for that in terms of sustaining, preserving, locking down, as it were, the effect of that Raja Yoga when a person runs that period. Now, there are also different types of Argalas and better Argalas than others. So the first thing to understand about Argalas is the 3 types. And, you know, I've called these principal Argalas, well, this is what they are called, principal Argalas, Viparit or reverse Argala, and then Trikona Argala. Principal Argalas can be formed by both natural benefics and natural malefics. Who remembers what the Argala positions are? So from any point in a chart, what would be the Argala positions? Who can tell me that?
2, 4, and 11.
2, 4, and 11. And then respective to those, what would be the obstructing points?
3, 10, and 12. 3, 10, and 12.
So for the 11th, it would be the 3rd. For the 2nd, it would be the 12th. For the 4th, it would be the 10th, right?
Yes.
But then sometimes an evaluation has to be made, because if there are more planets forming the Argala than planets obstructing, the Argala could still give some effect. Or if it's an equal number of planets, but the Argala is much stronger in terms of its dignity, then the Argala will still be effective. Remember this? Any questions about that? Okay, now the simplest one to recognize here is the Viparit Argala, and it can't be obstructed. Does anybody remember how this is formed? Without looking at your notes.
Is that 3
Third house from
3 malefics?
Correct. So from any point in a chart, any sign, any house, if you have 3 natural malefics, then, but if benefics are there, this is not this type of Argala. It can be only 3 or more natural malefics. So we're talking about Saturn, we're talking about Mars, we're talking about Sun, we're talking about Mercury when ill-associated, we're talking about dark moon. We're not including Rahu and Ketu in the formation of Argala. Good. Clear?
Yeah.
Now, as you all read, there's controversy in the world of Jyotish, or Jaimini Jyotish, about Trikona Argala. I'm convinced that this one man, a very famous Jaimini scholar, Iran Granthi Rangachari, is correct on this. It's Trikona Argala that gets formed when a natural benefic, only a natural benefic, is in either 5 or 9, that is a trine from any point, and the other trine is blank, doesn't have any planets in it. We'll see examples of this to make it clear. So the natural benefics, of course, would be Jupiter, Venus, Mars. And so if they're in one of the trines from any point and the other one is blank or vacant, then we have what would be called Trikona Argala. Is that clear? And this is the Argala, this is the Trikona Argala we're going to take in this class.
Mark, you mentioned Mars. Why is Mars?
For malefics.
Oh, for malefic. Oh, because I just thought you said benefics. You said Mars. Okay.
Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus.
Okay.
So that should be clear. But then, you know, not all Argalas are created equal. And this is what you're wanting to look for in particular. You're looking for the exceptional Argalas, which would be what's called, you know, if they're made exclusively by natural benefics, and if those benefics actually have good sources of strength, this is the best type of Argala. We call this Shubha Argala. But it's also superior Argala if there are 3 planets in one of the Argala positions, or in all 3 Argala positions, there are planets, whether they're benefics or malefics. Is it clear? These become more the superior Argalas. And these are the ones that we're looking for the most because they're the most meaningful.
Mark, when we say superior, above average, or whatever, we're basically qualifying this in terms of a strength of enhancement, or are we doing a subjective coloring?
No, in terms of strength of enhancement.
Okay.
How beneficial this Argala is to that is being formed. So, for example, as we'll see, and I think I'll show you today, or you've maybe seen already in the book, John F. Kennedy had this conjunction of the AK and the AMK in his birth chart, right? And when he ran that period, Aries period, is when he became president, because that's a really good quality Jaimini Raja Yoga. You will see if when we look at his chart again that he has Argala to all three Argala positions, all 3 positions that form Argala have Argala unobstructed. And the ones following in the second are 2 benefics, Jupiter, and then Venus in its own sign. So this dramatically enhances Aries and the Argala that it forms and the results it can give. So this is what we mean by superior. Is it clear? Okay. All right. Questions about Argala before we move on?
I have a question, Mark. You might have mentioned it already, but this is relevant during the dasha, the chara dasha, the period that it's running, that the Argala would take effect, or during any period or any transit?
No. In fact, if you go back and review this section carefully, I make a quote from Parashara about when the Argala will be effect. That is when you run that sign receiving the Argala.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Period or subperiod.
Okay.
So when does the Argala take effect? It's when you're running that period that has Argala formation onto it. Not when you're running the periods of the signs forming the Argala, but the sign when it's having the Argala formation onto that sign. Okay?
Onto that sign. Okay.
Onto that sign.
Well, we'll see examples.
We'll see examples. This will all become clear.
Okay.
Other questions about Argala before we move on?
Mark, I'm curious about the Viprita reverse Argala. If you're running, there wasn't much information on that. If it's all malefics, how do we interpret, say someone's running the period of Sagittarius and they have 3 malefics in Aquarius? How, are we going to see examples, or I'm sorry?
We are. But,
Okay.
again, the idea is, this is a particular kind of, classics in general praise natural malefics in the Trishadais, 3, 6, and 11. In fact, they talk about them being capable of giving Raja Yoga, right? So this is along that same idea that from when any point you've got sort of, 3 malefics, right? Then obviously the third house from there gets very enhanced, and in a way in which things like being able to take initiative, being enterprising, having a lot of courage and strength to pursue your desires will be very strong during that period, where any sign you've got 3 malefics falling, forming that Viparit Argala. But we'll see examples. That's my point to answer that question. Mm-hmm.
Mark, just a question: is it always do we just use the natural malefics, or do we consider the functional malefics?
No, only natural benefics or malefics. So now here's John Kennedy's chart I was talking about. You see the AKA and A combination. Mars is in its own sign, both in the birth chart and the Navamsha. You're not seeing that, so it's got great strength in that way. You see that 3 planets are in the 2nd house from there, unobstructed, no planets in the 12th house from there. Saturn is in the 4th with no planets in the 10th. The moon, which has to be considered benefic here because it's bright enough to be more than half full, is forming a Trikona Argala because it's in the 5th with no planets in the 9th. Rahu doesn't count. So this is a superior Argala formation to Aries, and it greatly enhances the kind of results the Raja Yoga of the AK, AMK could give here. That is how we use Argala to a great degree. Qualifying yogas. Clear? All right, so the only sign-based dasha we'll be using in this course is this calculation of Chara dasha. K and Rao's particular approach to this calculation of Chara dasha. Padas are an important concept within the Jaimini system. It should be fairly straightforward as to how you arrive at them. For any sign, you find where the Lord is gone, clockwise in the zodiac, how many signs, and then count an equal number of signs from there. The big thing to remember is that we don't take exceptions. So if you have a program, you have to make sure that padas are being calculated without exceptions. Otherwise, you'll end up with different data than what we'll be using in this course. And again, what is the effect of a pada? It's simply that it becomes a secondary house. And therefore, say for example, the pada of the 7th house becomes a secondary 7th house. Therefore, when you're running the sign containing the pada of the 7th house matters, such as marriage and relationship, can take place during that time. I used the example of Donald Trump, who first married in the Sagittarius period, which is the pada of his 7th house. Okay? And so on. Now, what I like to do is I create a screen when I'm doing Jaimini where I've got a chart, a Rashi, where I'm just showing padas. Right? A separate chart on the screen where it's just showing padas. So I can immediately see when I'm evaluating a particular sign period whether it's the pada of any house. Is it clear? Yeah. And again, just like special karakas carry all the significations of the house they represent, padas carry all the significations of the house they represent. Okay? All right, then I think we've covered, I guess the only thing I want to add here in terms of basic concepts is special lagnas. Jaimini uses a lot of special lagnas, and if you go on in Jaimini, these are very important, very significant, very interesting feature of it. The only one we're going to be referring to any great degree in this course, and actually we get into this more in Jaimini level 2, is what's called Karakamsha lagna. Everyone should be clear how this is derived. We find the planet with the highest degrees, whatever that is, the Atmakaraka, see its position in Navamsha, and that sign is something that we can use as a lagna both in the birth chart and in Navamsha. Is that clear? Any questions about that? It's useful to be able to look at the degree in the birth chart and be able to see its position in Navamsha. It's useful to do that. And I'll send out a document that if you don't know how to do that, it's not difficult to learn. I'll send out a document to that effect so everyone can learn how to do it. So I'm going to be asking you, here's this planet with the highest degrees. Where does it go in Navamsha? And therefore, what is the Karakamsha log? Okay. All right, then we've covered all the distinctive features of Jaimini, and now we'll get into Charadasha, and we're going to do Charadasha primarily by looking at charts. And you know, these programs will give us the calculation of Charadasha, but K. and Rao always insisted that his students learn the Charadasha calculation, and it is quite useful because, you know, sometimes you're just doing your laundry or driving in a car and you're thinking about a chart and you want to think about what period this person's in, at least their major period. And very easily, if you practice doing this, you can mentally calculate, knowing their age, and then knowing what Charadasha they're running. I think it's a useful thing to do, although people find mental calculations sometimes challenging. I understand that. It's not that difficult when you get a little practice at it, though. Okay, so the first chart I want to look at, not everyone maybe will recognize this, but George Clooney is a very famous film star, both also a director, a producer, big celebrity, been in the news a lot lately for things other than his acting, as we'll go on to talk about. But his chart presents a number of interesting things to discuss from the Jaimini point of view, and then we'll be looking at a specific dasha that he's in and how we can draw conclusions about what are some of the potentials of that dasha. But first of all, what is George Clooney most known for? He's a movie star. He's an actor. He's an actor, right? So, which house of the horoscope represents the performing arts?
The third house.
Fifth house.
Fifth house.
Fifth. I think that's the third, isn't it?
Oh, the third.
Third house. Third house.
The third house.
So which karaka in the Jaimini system would represent all the significations of the third house?
Venus.
Mars.
Venus.
Sattvikaraka, Venus.
Venus. And what do we notice about his Venus?
It's
It's
exalted.
exalted.
It's exalted. So again, you know, one of the interpretations is that, you know, everything related to the third house and third house significations would get enhanced and be able to express itself in a strong and favorable way. Of course, what's the planet of the arts?
Venus.
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 All right. So that's one interesting feature of this chart. What would be another one from the Jaimini point of view? What do we know is one of the career indicators in Jaimini?
Second house. Second house. It's the second house.
Karakas. Which
Oh,
karaka?
Karaka. I'm sorry. Amati Karaka. Yeah.
AAMK.
AMK.
So what do we notice about his AMK?
Exalted in the third.
Also exalted.
It's in its exaltation sign in the third house. And we haven't gotten into Jaimini Raja Yogas yet. That'll be next week, but you've learned enough to know what else do you notice about his sun.
Exalted.
It's with the AK. It's a fifth word, or fifth word.
It's with the AK, so it's forming that one of the more significant Raja Yogas, kind of equivalent to the idea of a 9-10 Raja Yoga in the Parashari system, is the AMK, which is what we see here in the third house. What else do you notice about his chart that might be of some note here from the Jaimini point of view?
The moon aspects, the dark arc aspects its seventh house from the ascendant.
Well, yes, of course, if we're looking at what karakas are falling on what houses, then yes, the DK moon falls is Rashi Drishti aspecting the seventh. Well, one thing you should know about George Clooney is that he has some very expensive real estate. Right?
Oh, okay.
He lives in palaces.
Okay.
He lives in palaces. He has this villa in Lake Como, and him and his recently married wife Amal, purchased this huge estate, full like the historical estate in an island in the Thames River in London. So, just to give you a little idea here, there's a Jaimini Sutra, and I believe I quote it in this course, that says, when from the Karakamsha Lagna, there is an exalted benefic, or just an exalted planet, doesn't even need to be an exalted benefic, a person will have palatial homes. Now, who did we say is the AK here?
Mercury.
Mercury. Can someone tell me where it falls in Navamsha?
Not readily.
Sagittarius.
Sagittarius.
So now use Sagittarius as if it was the first house, as in Lagna. What happens to the fourth?
Exalted Venus.
Exalted Venus.
Exalted Venus. He has palatial homes. But now which, and this is what's interesting about his chart, which planet or which karaka signifies the fourth house and therefore residences and homes?
Jupiter.
Jupiter
And
is aspecting it.
what do you notice about his Jupiter?
Debilitated. It's the MK.
It's in its debilitation sign, but what?
Nietzsche.
Aspecting his sun?
Well, it's Nietzsche, but what goes on here?
It's the MK. It's the fourth.
Well, what about its Nietzsche status? That's what I'm asking about. What about its Nietzsche status?
Getting cancer.
Nietzsche Bhanga, right?
Nietzsche Bhanga. Oftentimes the question comes up as to whether the idea of Nietzsche Bhanga applies to the Jaimini system. The answer is it does, and it happens in the same way. Okay, and his Jupiter Mahadashi here in the Parashara system was terrific. Okay, he's winning Academy Awards and he's a big star. So it gets strong cancellation in a couple of different ways. The cancellation comes from how? How is its cancellation happening here?
Saturn is in the same house.
Saturn.
It's with its sign lord. That's number one. Okay?
It's with Moon, which is where it's exalted.
Mars in Cancer.
Cancer. So it's with the sign lord of where it's exalted. It's with that.
So it's both with its sign lord and with its exaltation lord. So that's two ways. Does anybody see another way this would happen in a Parashari way?
Mars in Cancer.
Why? What's the significance there?
It's debilitated in Cancer, Mars. So they are.
Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So the planet that is exalted in Capricorn is aspecting Jupiter.
Well, it's more the idea of two debilitated planets glancing at each other.
Okay.
So really, there's three. This Jupiter gets canceled. It's canceled very strongly. But now, where does Clooney own? He was born in the U.S. Where does he own famous property?
Italy.
And now England.
In England.
These are foreign countries. Where does the MK fall?
12th house.
12th house.
In the 12th house. Do you see? This can be one of the ways in which owning property in a foreign land can show up. Your MK can be in the 12th. And of course, this most recent property in England that he purchased with his wife for billions of dollars, or millions of dollars, right, is in England, where he now resides. So he's been running his Capricorn period since May 2011, goes up to May 2023. So if we're just interpreting the Capricorn period, what's step number one according to the guidelines that I gave you? What's step number one in interpreting any sign dasha? Anybody remember?
The 7 steps, you mean?
What house? What house? What house is?
What's the first step?
What is the house? The house?
What house is it?
Yeah.
Okay. What house is it? First of all, what house is it from the Rashi?
Yeah.
Right, from fourth Lagna, but in a moment we're going to take a look at what house it is from Karakamsha Lagna. Oh.
I have a question.
Oh, hold on. No, I'll come to your question. So what should that tell us about what should that start to tell us about his Capricorn period? What could be some of the things we could conclude from this?
From Karakamsha, second house.
No, not Karkamsha, not Karkamsha. From the birth logna.
Oh, from birth logna.
So
You start thinking about the meanings of the 12th house in terms of having 12th house experiences, right?
Yeah.
Foreign travels.
Foreign lands and whatnot.
He spends all his time now and has spent most of his time in the Capricorn period in a foreign country.
Oh, it's in the Capricorn. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
He actually lives there, not just part of the year now. He lives in a foreign country year round.
Marriage to
Now,
a foreign.
Hold on. Other 12th house meanings you'd have to consider too, but what makes this a good 12th house? What makes this a good 12th house such that we're likely to have meanings that are favorable?
Well, yeah, because of those
The moon is there and Jupiter.
Saturn and Sun sign.
Well, okay, now the 12th Lord is in the 12th house, right? Remember this idea, both in Parashari and Jaini, when the Lord of the house is in the house, that's good for the house.
It's good, yeah. And then things get canceled.
Then also, we have the influence of a benefic who's not really giving its results like a debilitated planet here. And the moon here is kind of a neutral. It's kind of only half, well, it's still more than half bright. So that's good. So what other things could you conclude here from looking at these? Remember that when we're interpreting planets as they relate and influence a sign, we have 3 levels of interpretation. First level is what? First level of interpretation.
The house and the sign that's in there.
Well, in terms of a planetary influence on a sign, what's the first level of thought about it? Is it a natural benefic? Or is it a natural
Yeah.
Okay. What's the second level? This is right in those 7 steps. What's the second level?
what kind of karaka is it?
The natural karaka, natural significations. Okay. So
The
based on
the third one is the
special karaka. Special karaka. Third level is special karaka. First level is the influence of a natural benefic or a natural malefic. Second level, we ask ourselves, what do these planets naturally signify?
Right.
Third level is what special karakas are there? So now think about this. The moon is the natural karaka of what? One of the natural karakas of what?
The home.
The home. And then plus the MK is here. Do you see how that?
Wow.
You see how that reemphasizes the idea of residence in a foreign country, purchase of real estate in a foreign country? See? But now Jupiter is the natural significator of what? Also that could be relevant here. Well, first of all, before we go there, moon is also a special karaka. Which is it?
DK, partner.
DK. So what happened to him during this period?
Got married.
And
To a foreigner.
To a foreigner.
Well, yeah, since she's probably foreign.
And plus, of course, Rahu's in the 7th, number 1, right? All representing all things foreign. But then his DK is in the 12th. He has a history of being involved with foreign women.
Yeah.
And of course, he eventually did then marry one.
The Capricorn aspects the Rahu, or whatever, that makes
Well, they do, but he's not running the Leo period.
Oh.
Rahu does aspect the DK, though. Rahu representing all things foreign, aspect all these planets in Capricorn. Again, emphasizing the foreign experience and emphasizing foreign spouse. You see? This is how we start thinking about any period. Now, Jupiter is there. What's Jupiter? The natural significator that could be relevant if a person gets married.
Children?
Children.
He had twins.
Wow.
Gemini.
But now, look at the DK. I'm sorry, the PK, and the fact that Jupiter's in the 12th with Saturn. What could this mean? PK is in its debilitation sign in the 6th house. Jupiter, natural significator, is in the 12th with Saturn. What could this mean?
Delayed children, like.
He hasn't had a child until age 57.
Yeah, late.
Rather later in life. Delayed, not denied, delayed. Right?
The PK delays, is that what you're saying?
No, no, what I'm saying is that the PK is badly placed. PK, natural special card. PK is Mars. It's in
I understand. Mars is badly placed, therefore children only came later in life. Okay, I understand.
Jupiter, natural significator, is in the 12th with Saturn. This
Yeah,
would
and Saturn means delays. I understand. Yeah.
Okay. And it's also got the additional affliction of Rahu, but you know, anyway, but he did have children, but not until very later in life. So this is how, now what happens to the foot? Now, one of the things we do is we use Dasha Lagna, right? We saw that Saturn really had the potential for bringing real estate in a foreign country. The quality of the real estate might be indicated by looking at the fourth house from there. What do we see?
Yeah, the AM and AK.
Raja Yoga in the fourth, involving the sun in its exaltation sign. So we're using now it as a Dasha Lagna. I said that when we're evaluating any period, you don't just see which house it is from the birth Lagna, you see which house it is from Karkamsha Lagna. But before we do that, one thing that has happened to George Clooney in his Capricorn period, I don't know if people are aware of this, with a couple of other partners, he developed and marketed a form of tequila, okay, a liquor, form of tequila. Recently, that partnership was bought, the brand was bought by a company, and it was sold for $700 million with a $300 million addition potential. Millions came to Clooney as a result of this, okay, in his Capricorn period. Now, one of the things that we want to do from Dasha Lagna, if we want to see some financial potentials, are looking at the influences on the 2nd and the 11th house, particularly the house of gains here, because it's through the sale of a business. What do you notice about the influences? So now here comes your question, Michael. Scorpio, you can see, is empty. Well, no, this actually isn't your question. Scorpio itself doesn't have any planets. It's the 11th from there, but how many grahas influence Scorpio? From how many grahas influence Scorpio in this chart?
Whoa, 6?
Yeah.
6 grahas, including its lord. That's an important thing to note. Including its lord, Mars, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things you want to do when examining a particular period, Dasha Lagna, is see which houses get the influence of a lot of grahas, because that means that'll get an emphasis. In this case, you have 6 out of 9 grahas influencing the 11th house from there, including its lord. This shows the potential for these great windfall gains during the Capricorn period. But now, examine the Capricorn Karkamsha Lagna. Does anybody remember what the Karkamsha Lagna is?
That was my question.
Yes.
It's Sagittarius.
Sagittarius.
I had a
Which
question.
house, wait, hold on. Which house from Sagittarius and Capricorn?
Second.
And you see how it gets pronounced. Saturn, the Lord of the second, is in the second, again with the influence of a number of grahas, including the benefic Jupiter. Your question, Rita.
Yeah, are we supposed to be seeing the full Navamsha chart? Because you asked the question earlier, where does Mercury fall in Navamsha? And I couldn't see the Navamsha chart.
Well, there it is. But again, what I want everyone to be able to do is be able to look at the degree of the planet and see it in Navamsha. You'll get a lesson about that.
Right? Okay, you mean we're supposed to memorize where it's supposed to go in Navamsha just by the degree?
Just by the degree, it's a very simple mental calculation, as you
Okay,
see.
great. Okay, sorry.
So, because all these planets, including the Lord of the sign in the sign, falls in the second house from Sagittarius, one interpretation that we could give is that this was going to really bring a lot of additional wealth into it. So you're already extremely wealthy, but this was even going to bring more wealth. Okay? So we could go on and on. First of all, hold on. But before you ask a question, hold on. Consider Argula from Capricorn. Does it come into play at all? Consider Argula from Capricorn. Are there any planets in the second from Capricorn? No. Are there any planets in the 11th from Capricorn? No. Are there any planets in the 4th from Capricorn?
Yes.
And are there any planets in the 10th that might obstruct it?
No.
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 And remember, when you have exalted planets or benefics directly in good dignity forming the Argula, it becomes a more superior Argula. So this good superior Argula helps solidify, lock down, preserve, sustain the effects that Capricorn can give. This is how we think about Argula.
But then there's the obstruction from
There's no obstruction. There are no planets in Libra, which would be the 10th from there. Obstruction to the 4th principal Argula comes from planets in the 10th from there. There are no planets in Libra.
Okay.
Clear? All this just takes practice to be able to see. You're all seeing this for the first time. If you're confused or you have trouble seeing it, don't worry about that. It comes with practice. I see it instantaneously because I've been doing this now for 23 years.
All right. Is Venus, wouldn't that be an obstruction from Capricorn?
Well, first of all, where does the Argula come from? It comes from the 11th house, but there are no planets in the 11th, so planets in the third obstructing don't become a consideration.
Got it.
If there's no Argula, obstruction has no meaning.
Understand. Okay, thank you. That clarifies that.
Okay, good. Can we go on? Okay. So I had shown you before the chart of Steph Curry. Now we're going to mentally calculate Charadasha. Where does the Charadasha start in this chart? Where does Charadasha always start in every chart?
Ascendant.
Ascendant.
With the sign of a Lagna, right? So it starts with Cancer. And does anyone know whether the Dasha progresses forward in the zodiac or backward in the zodiac? Who can tell me that?
Backwards.
Backwards. But
It goes in reverse.
Indirect.
You get a virtual chocolate for that good first answer. If we were in a real classroom, I'd be giving you a real chocolate, but I have to give you a virtual chocolate because we're not in a real classroom. Good answer. Again, the way to remember this, if you're looking at South England style charts, is signs in the upper left corner and upper in the right corner are always direct. All the other signs are indirect. So his life starts in the Cancer period. How many years and why? How many years would the Cancer period be? Who's the Lord?
The moon.
Moon.
Do we count forward or backwards?
Backwards. Backwards.
So how many years is Cancer?
6.
6.
6.
Count backwards.
This one.
So 6 years, because it's 7 minus 1.
7 minus 1.
Very good. So Cancer was 6 years. Now we come to Gemini. Is the counting direct or indirect to Mercury?
Indirect.
Direct. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, always direct. All the other signs, indirect.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So count direct to Mercury, minus 1. What do we get?
8 years.
8 years.
8 years. 7 and 8. He's now 15. Okay. Come to the Taurus period. Do we count direct or indirect?
Direct.
Direct.
Direct. So how many years, Taurus period?
11.
12 minus 1, 11. 11 plus 15, 26. Prime years for an athlete. Now, which dasha does he run? What dasha does he run next?
Aries.
Aries.
Which house of the horoscope is it?
10th.
10th.
The 10th house. And how many years will this period be? Is the counting to Mars direct or indirect?
Direct.
That would be direct.
It's direct. How many years?
8.
8.
8 years. So from age 26 to 34, absolute prime years for an athlete, he runs this period of Aries, his 10th house. Now, first level of analysis, step number 1 is the 10th house, career. Second level analysis, does it get the influence of natural benefics or natural malefics or what?
Natural benefics.
All natural benefics. Jupiter, Venus, Mercury are aspecting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see?
Yeah.
And you're also going to learn, if you take Gemini level 2, that whenever Mercury and Jupiter simultaneously influence the house, that house and its expression is particularly strong. Gemini has its own methods for determining sign strength, one of which is that it's the influence of Jupiter or Mercury, particularly against both, becomes very strong, which is what we see here. Now Rahu and Ketu are also influencing it. So you're running the major period of a sign that's the 10th house that has the 2 best benefics. That alone should tell you that this is going to be a very good period professionally. Okay? Just that alone. That's simple elegance. But now it gets better. What else do we see here? Which karakas are there?
Amatya Karaka. Amatya Karaka.
Amatya Karaka.
And the Putra Karaka.
Already learned that when a person runs the sign containing the Amatya Karaka, it can, not invariably, but it can mean professional success, professional rise. Whether it does or not depends on additional factors. It won't always. Whether it does or not depends on additional factors. But who is it with?
Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Yeah.
It's with Jupiter, another natural benefic, also happens to be which karaka?
PK. Yeah.
Now, we haven't learned this yet, but you'll see in the next lesson that when the AMK is connected to the PK, that forms a Gemini Raja yoga.
Right.
But remember, there's an exchange going on here. Remember, there's an exchange between Jupiter and Mars. So Mars is also connected to Jupiter. Which karaka is Mars?
Wow. AK.
Wow is right.
That's also a Gemini Raja Yoga.
Oof.
Yes, because now this combination affecting the 10th house is not just AMK PK, it's AK AMK PK. Remember, this man is not just a professional basketball player, not just an all-star. He was the most valuable player in the league.
Woo.
He's setting records for numbers of three-point shots, for his field goal percentage from the foul. I mean, he's just having an incredible dasha, okay, in terms of the pinnacle of professional athletic success in his sport. And you can start to see why.
I have a question. Could we say that he had a child during this period, or do we need to see other factors?
Why would you say that?
Because the Putra Karaka is there.
And Putra Karaka is also who?
Jupiter.
The dark of children.
Jupiter is both the natural significator, but then also is the PK. Yes, he had a daughter during this period. And it was now for extra credit and more chocolate, can anybody tell me why that would have happened, could have happened in the Leo subperiod? Why could
the aspect?
Oh, I'm handing out a lot of chocolates then. because you're all right. It's because Leo gets the aspect of Jupiter, natural significator, and also is the PK. So one of the subperiods that could bring the child that's promised in the major period, and I doubt if he's done yet, right? In terms of this period giving children, is because of this. Now, is there any argilla formation to this Raja Yoga? Very beautiful Raja Yoga in the 10th house of this chart.
So we have the second.
11.
Well, first of all, how do you determine this? You look at the second house. There's no planets, no argilla. You look at the fourth from there, which would be Cancer. No planets, no argilla. You look at the 11th from there, and then you see Mercury.
Mercury, yeah, okay.
You don't count Rahu. Shubha argilla, because it's a natural benefic here. Shubha argilla. Besides Rashi Dristi, it's also forming argilla. Through this Aries, 10th house, right? And then we look to see if there's natural benefics in the trines from there, which would be Leo and Sagittarius. There is not. So there's no Trikona argilla. Is it clear?
Yes.
So this is what I mean by elegant simplicity. Anybody who took this Essentials of Geometry course, which means you, could if someone handed them this chart and say, what are some of the potentials of the Aries major period, or this period of life from 2013 to 2021, you'd have to see these potentials very easily in a glance. It should take you all of about 5 seconds once you get practiced at it.
Could you say that there was some health issue because Mercury rules the GK?
Yes, what happens to professional athletes very frequently?
Get injured.
Injuries.
They get injured. Which he's had injuries, ankle, knee. He's out for a period of time. Nothing so severe that it's been career-ending, but his career has been interrupted at times, for sometimes a period of months, because he's getting injured, which is what's the potential for that in this period is what's signified by that Mercury is also the GK. People have to understand that a planet can be both a positive influence and a negative influence from a different angle at the same time.
Mark, question on that, on the Mercury in the 8th there. Would you also consider Rahu as being a malefic contributing, or are we not factoring in Rahu?
Rahu, but Rahu has a good placement here. It's in its own sign.
Right.
It's going to express itself in a, when natural malefics are either in their own sign or exalted, their maleficness gets reduced considerably and actually can have a favorable effect.
Okay, but we still consider, either way, we still consider Rahu, even though we're not considering Rahu and Ketu for Argala, we're still considering Rahu as being a planet in that, affecting Mercury in the 8th, in that period.
No question. No question.
Okay.
No question. Absolutely.
Rahu in this case is in the very last degree of Aquarius, whereas Sun is in, it's not even in the first degree, it's in 0. So they are very, very near to each other. Would you say that there's been any problem with his, with something to do with the DK, which is relationships?
Well, it certainly isn't publicly known. They seem to have a terrific marriage, but you never know. It can look good on the outside, but there can be issues. I just don't know.
Could
But
Rahu?
if you're saying here that because they're so close together, even though they're not in the same sign, would they be considered connected? I'd have to say yes.
Okay, thanks.
Could Rahu be a significator of like foreign things?
Well, it is a significator of all things foreign. It is. Okay. But he didn't marry a foreign spouse.
Okay.
It's not like in the case of George Clooney, where his DK and Rahu are in a mutual aspect.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move on to other charts here because so Indians should recognize this name. If you're non-Indian, you may not recognize it. This is a former Prime Minister of India, P.V. Narasimha Rao. That, someone had to fall from power. Some very unusual things had to happen for him to become Prime Minister. He was ready to retire. He had no thought of going on in politics at all. And then some, unusual sort of things happened in the political arena, and he was brought forth as a candidate, and all of a sudden he found himself to be prime minister. Well, let's discuss this from the Parashari point of view first, because it's kind of interesting that way. This happened in the major period of Mars. How does Mars make him prime minister, given this very high political office? By what principles in the Parashari system should this be understood? First of all, what allows Mars to give its results strongly?
Mars is in the 10th house with the Lord of Gemini, which is Mercury.
Well, first of all, please answer the question. What allows Mars to give its results strongly?
It's conjunct with the sun, 13 degrees.
Dikbala.
Digbala, Sun in the 10th house.
Mars and Sun both getting directional strength here, right? And of course, the natural significators of kingship, authority, and executive status. Mm-hmm. But that's part of the story. Mars here rules which houses for Virgo?
The 3rd and the 8th.
Do people understand that in Parashara Hora, the chapter on Yoga Karakas, a principle is given in where the lords of certain houses, 2, 8, and 12, become what's called impressionables. And they start to get the results of the stronger house lords that they're with. Anyone ever heard of that principle? Again, the principle is that if the planet is the lord of the 2nd, the 8th, or the 12th, it'll give the results of the stronger house lords it's with. Who's the strongest house lord that Mars is with here?
Mercury.
Yeah.
Mercury as the 1st and 10th lord. And what's Mercury's source of strength here besides being in its own sign? Anyone would tell me?
It's in
Atmakaraka.
No. What source of strength?
Retrograde.
It's retrograde.
Well,
Its Navamsha is in Gemini.
Mahapurusha.
Well,
Mercury Navamsha is in Gemini itself.
It's
source
with
of strength.
Sun.
It is
It's
Sandus?
not, no, hold, please stop. It's not only in its own sign, it's also Vargotama.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you understood where it would fall in Navamsha, it's also in Gemini again, so it's Vargotama. Somebody mentioned it gives a Mahapurusha Yoga, Bhadra Yoga, and Mahapurusha Yogas are more likely to give a true result of making a person a significant person if they repeat from both the moon and from the sun, and it does in this case.
Wow.
Mercury falls at an angle in its own sign, Vargotama, from the birth lagna, from the moon, and also from the sun. It's a true Mahapurusha Yoga, and Mars is giving this result.
But isn't the Mars in a great enemy sign currently?
It's got directional strength. That's the key. Now, there was other things that went on in his administration, scandals and so forth. He actually got prosecuted for it. But I'm trying to explain to you how, by what principles Mars here can make him prime minister.
Wow.
But now, coming to the giant, and the other reason, well, we won't go on to this, but in Germany, it was Cancer. How does the Cancer period raise him up? By what have you learned preliminarily that we're going to learn more about? Could it be seen that the Cancer major period could make him prime minister in an unexpected, sudden reversal type of way?
The 11th house, that's one thing. And
Put your finger.
Taurus aspects Cancer, and Venus is the Amatyakaraka.
Well, but it's not there. There's no aspect on the Cancer of the Amatyakaraka.
No.
A planet only aspects from the sign that it's in, right?
so from Cancer, Amatyakaraka is in 10th.
That's it. Who said this?
Me, Tanu.
Very good. When the AMK falls in the sign, like we saw in the case of Steph Curry, and plus it's involved in additional this can rise a person up professionally. One thing we'll also see is that when the AMK falls in the 10th from Dasha Lagna. From Dasha Lagna, this can also be a period that can raise a person's up. You don't see this here, but Venus has a source of strength in Navamsha. It's in an exchange with its sign lord Jupiter in Navamsha. So it has a source of strength that makes the difference. when an Amatya Karaka falling in such a position has a source of strength. But now, who else aspects this Amatya Karaka in the 10th? What other Rashi Dristis does it get?
Jupiter and Saturn.
The moon.
Jupiter, natural benefic, in a great friend sign.
Yeah.
Now Saturn here is the BK, but it's also the 5th Lord. Now in the next week's lesson about Jaimini Raja Yoga, we'll see that the 5th Lord combining with the AMK is another Jaimini Raja Yoga.
Wow. Yeah.
So this is how it could be. Now, if somebody handed me this chart, could I say, well, you're going to become prime minister? No. But if I saw the Cancer period and I just did this analysis, I'd absolutely say this period could raise you up very high. Notice that his Amatya Karaka is in the 8th house. Someone had to fall, some unusual circumstances, some reversals had to take place in order for him to become prime minister.
Cool.
I have a question about Ketu though. Like, how does Ketu influence the 10th house from Cancer?
Well, first of all, it influences in terms of all of its natural significations. Okay, and you know his administration, if you read about it, there was a big bribery scandal, and he was actually prosecuted and convicted for after he was prime minister. He got acquitted on appeal, but there was all kinds of shady things that were going on, apparently in his organization. So it's an affliction. It's not a major affliction, but it's an affliction. Then it gets, Saturn here also aspects. So Saturn has 2 roles to play. It's a natural malefic aspecting onto there, but it's also as the 5th Lord helping form Raja Yoga. Both. This is what you have to understand. A planet can be both giving a positive influence and a negative influence at the same time. Okay. Question?
Just to clarify regarding the AMK being in the 8th, that you said that somebody would have to fall for him to rise. So that is because the MK is there, nothing else.
Well, it's a part of the whole picture. Sudden reversals in one's career life, AMK in the 8th. Ups and downs, reversals of fortune, major shifts, unexpected and sudden. These can all be a part of the AMK because it's like having the 10th Lord in the 8th.
Mm.
You see? Can I answer your question?
I'm thinking about it, sorry.
Okay. All right, let's go on. I don't know if everyone recognizes the name Celine Dion, very famous international popular music star, right? She also has Cancer Lagna, just like Stephen Curry. So let's calculate her Charadasha. So how many years would be the Cancer period that she started out life in?
3 years.
3 years, counting is in reverse, 4 away, minus 1 equals 3. How long would be the Gemini period? Is the counting direct or indirect?
Direct.
Direct. Count the
8.
Mercury.
8.
How many years?
8. Yeah.
9 minus 1 equals 8. So 8 and 3, she's 11 years old. Coming out in the Taurus period, how many years? Is the counting direct or indirect?
Direct.
So how many years?
9
3.
years.
9 years. Because Venus is 10 signs away, minus 1 equals 9. Counting is direct in the zodiac. Right? So she now runs this period from age 11 to age 20. She starts to become a big popular music star in Canada, singing in French. How could this be predicted? Very easily.
And from there.
Does everybody see what happens to the 10th house from there?
Wow.
First of all, 2 natural benefics. Secondly, combination of the 8K, AMK, Raja Yoga.
Yeah.
And what other additional influences does Aquarius get? We're seeing these planets from Dasha Lagna, Taurus. What other additional influences do you see onto Mercury and Venus? Rashi Drishti.
Jupiter?
Jupiter.
No. Rashi Drishti.
Oh, Rossi just.
Rashi Drishti.
Moon and Mars.
Moon and Mars.
Moon and Mars. Now, one thing you're going to learn is that the Moon and Venus form a special Jaimini, Raja, and Dana Yoga when they are conjunct or when they are in mutual Rashi Drishti. You'll learn all about that in the next lesson. So it becomes quite a dramatic picture onto the 10th house when she runs her major period of Taurus. But then she runs what period next?
Aries.
Aries.
Wow. It just keeps
Which house of the horoscope is it?
10th.
10th house. Does it get the influence of any Jaimini Raja yogas?
Yeah, of course.
How many grahas influence the 10th? How many grahas influence Aries?
3.
3?
4.
5.
5.
5.
5.
Venus and Mercury aspect from Aquarius and Jupiter aspects from Leo, all the natural benefics.
Benefics. Wow.
Oh, I thought you meant onto it. There's only 3 onto it.
No.
Sorry.
There are the influence. There's 2 in it.
One. Yes.
Venus, Mercury, and then Jupiter. Okay? So 5 grahas. Now, including the Lord of the sign in the sign, the 10th Lord in the 10th house. This is really good.
Wow.
This is really, really good.
Fantastic.
This is where she becomes a big international star. Now consider Argala.
Ooh.
Not the second, but Shubha Argala, 2 benefics from the 11th.
Wow.
Now, does anybody see an additional Argala? Does anybody see an additional Argala?
Jupiter. Oh, that's fit.
Why?
It's a trachona. Is that considered a trachona?
Yeah, it's a trachona.
I don't have that in my head yet, but Jupiter.
Wendy, I'm still going to give you a chocolate even though you can't pronounce it.
That was good.
It's a trachona Argala because Jupiter's a sole natural benefic in the 5th with the 9th house from there vacant.
Okay, good. I get triple chocolates.
That was excellent.
No, just one.
Good.
So, everybody remembers the movie Titanic?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the theme song from the Titanic, My Heart Will Go With You?
Yeah.
It all happens when she moves into her Aries period. Now, she was a pretty big star to begin with, right? But then she becomes this mega international star, making, $1 million a day for performances in Las Vegas. How many years is the Aries period?
12.
Full 12 years. See, right dasha at right time of life.
Yeah.
Do you see how predictable that was based on the principles you learned?
Yeah.
Simple, elegant. Now you should recognize the name of the very famous author, Jane Austen. Anybody remember her most famous novel? It's looked upon as being one of the greatest works of literature in the world.
Pride and
Right.
Prejudice.
Prejudice.
Yep.
Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen. She wrote that novel first draft when she was 20 years old.
Whoa. Wow.
If you can imagine. Let's see what period that she may have wrote that in and why. Where does the dasha start?
Virgo.
How many years?
10.
Someone's getting very good at calculating the chara dasha.
But I don't get any chocolates. Darn.
You can have the whole box.
I'll take an apple.
At first, it gets very easy to earn chocolates. As we go along, it has to get harder and harder. Okay?
Oh, darn.
So now, because the counting is indirect and Mercury is 11 signs away, -1, it was 10 years. Now, which order does the dasha progress? What's the next sign that she
Direct.
runs?
Libra.
Good. Libra. How many years?
12.
Takes her up to what age?
Wow. That's
22.
22.
This is when she writes Pride and the Prejudice. She'd written other books. She'd been quite a rich, wasn't publishing yet. But she was writing these fantastic works of literature that were to make her a legend during this time. Now, which houses of the horoscope most rule authorship, writing?
Third.
Third.
In the
What
ninth.
else?
Ninth for publishing.
I thought that was the fifth.
The fifth.
Yes, 3 and 5.
5, yeah.
3 and 5. Now, which Jaimini Karakas represent the third house? Which represents the fifth house?
Jupiter the fifth, and
Mars for third.
No. Which, not natural.
Oh.
So which Jaimini Karakas? Which Jaimini Putra Karaka representing the fifth house, and which one representing the third house?
Mars.
Utkaraka.
Special Karaka, Chara Karaka.
Oh.
BK.
Yes, Jupiter.
Venus, a natural benefic in its own sign, is her PK. Getting the aspect of who?
Wow, Jupiter, wow.
Aspects Jupiter, yeah.
As a natural benefic and also as the BK.
Wow.
So it's during this time that she writes, at the age of 20 years old, one of the greatest pieces of literature in English of all time. Now, it doesn't publish then. Publishing, we're going to see publishing later. Okay.
Wow.
This is when she authors this. Now we're going to
Publishing Taurus.
Pardon? Sorry?
Was publishing them during Taurus.
It could have been in terms of not some of the sub-periods, but just hold on here. Hold on. Now, she published in her Jupiter Mahadasha in Vimshotri. She published in her Jupiter, she became a famous author for the books that she had written in her Jupiter Mahadasha. It's in the 9th house of publishing. It wasn't in the Charadasha of Taurus. But let's go on here because we're going to fast forward. So she's 22 after Libra. What comes next and how many years?
22.
She's 22 after she's Libra. She goes into which dasha next?
Oh, Scorpio.
How many years?
1.
23 now. Come to Sagittarius. How many years?
7.
5.
6 times correct. 6
Oh.
times. What
Wait a
five?
minute. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah. Oops, again.
28. Capricorn. How many years?
4.
4. She's 32. Come to Aquarius. How many years?
5.
5. So she's 33, something like that. Now come to the Pisces period.
Ooh.
Evaluate the 10th house from Pisces. What are the influences?
DK and AMK.
Yeah.
The Raju.
It's during this period she becomes a famous author. How could it this been predicted? How could it be seen?
Oh, it has
So
AK as
directional strength.
The Atmakaraka, MK. Yeah.
Aspected by who?
By Mars, Sun.
No, Mars is the.
Yeah. Oh, it's aspected by Saturn and also Moon.
And what's the
AK.
significance of that?
Saturn is
Raju.
Okay.
Saturn
So
is
you
the
have,
Karaka, Moon is the
and what is the sources of strength for both, for those who can see the Navamsha position, what's the source of strength for both Mars and Saturn? You know, somebody needs to mute your mic. We've got a lot of noise in the background here.
Both are Vargotama.
Good, Rosalind, both of our Gotama. You see? You've got the AMK falling in the 10th, just like in the case of PV Narasimha. But it's not just the AMK falling in the 10th, it's forming significant Raja Yogas. And the planets involved have really good sources of strength. It's during this period that she starts to become famous as an author for many things that she'd written a long time ago. You see how predictable it was, based on some very simple principles I'm teaching you. Now, in the Jaimini Sutras, the combinations are given for authorship. Things that make a person a successful author. You know, are people hearing an echo effect?
Yes, there's a lot of disturbance.
Yeah, there's a lot of interference.
Maybe I need to wear headphones last time. Normally I don't need to. I don't have them with me at the moment. So the combination is from Karakamsa Lagna. Who is her Karakamsa Lagna here? Can anyone tell me? Who's her Atmakaraka?
Saturn.
And where does it go in Navamsha? Someone tell me.
Virgo, so it's going to be what it is now. So it's Virgo.
Here's the birth Lagna. Now, one of the things that the Jaimini Sutras said is that if there is the influence of Jupiter and the Moon on the first or the fifth house in Karakamsa Lagna, the person is a successful author. What do you see here?
Oh, the Argala.
No, the Moon is in the Karakamsa Lagna. The Moon is in the Karakamsa Lagna. And Jupiter aspect into the fifth house from there, Capricorn. And the fifth house from there is in the first house, Vargotama. In other words, that's combination given in the Jaimini Sutras for successful author applies to her chart.
Mark, when we see this combination, how do we know when it's going to take effect?
When you run the periods of the planets involved. I mean, first of all, it's a natal potential, right?
So she would either have to run Virgo or Taurus.
Well, it's in effect all the time, but then, you know, you're going to be able to see this dynamically, as we'll see later on. I don't want to get too into that now. We'll cover that later. But certainly when she runs her Capricorn period, right, which is the fifth house in Karakamsa Lagna, receiving those combinations, it's going to be a good period for authorship. But it's more complicated than that. All right, so going on here. Now, we've been looking at celebrity horoscopes and looking at events in hindsight. I want to now discuss a chart that I've made predictions on that I've been fortunate enough to come out. And I'm making these predictions by a combination of using the Parashara system with Vimshotri Dasha and also Jaimini system with Charadasha. This is what K.N. Rao referred to as the composite technique. You've heard me refer to that in the written material. This is how I was taught to make predictions. So focusing on this person's Taurus period. This person's Taurus period. And use it as a Dasha Lagna. Which house in particular becomes rather, or which houses in particular get rather emphasized based on number of grahas influencing them?
11th.
The 11th house. But then all the dual Rashis, Gemini, which would be the second from there, Virgo, which would be the fifth from there, Sagittarius, which would be the eighth from there, they get the influence of those 5 grahas, right? 5 grahas being Moon, Venus, Rahu, Ketu, Jupiter. But the 11th house in particular Why additionally does the 11th house get so emphasized other than the fact that it's getting the influence of 5 grahas? What else?
Argala.
Well, even before Argala. Even before Argala.
Could you repeat the question, please?
The question is, what makes the 11th house here so pronounced other than the fact that it gets the influence of 5 grahas?
Well, Venus is an exaltation and it's its house ruler. Venus is that Taurus's house ruler. It's an
Well, hold on. Just the fact that it contains an exalted benefic.
yeah, and it's its house ruler. Taurus's house ruler is Venus.
Well, we're not talking about Taurus here. We're talking about Pisces.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's...
But the principle applies, right? Jupiter, the Lord, is aspecting onto its own 11th house from there.
Yeah, and that too. Yeah.
Never miss the fact that when the Lord is influencing the house, whether it's there, as in George Clooney's Saturn period or Capricorn period, or whether it's getting the aspect, right? Which is, what we saw before happening to the 11th house, Mars aspecting its own house in Capricorn. Here, if you make Taurus the Lagna, Jupiter becomes the 11th Lord aspecting onto its own 11th house. Now, what did I tell you about the Moon-Venus combination?
The Raj Yoga.
Raja and Dan Yoga. Right? Raja and Dan Yoga. So what's one of the things you could predict that the Taurus period could bring?
Career, finances, gain.
Good, very good period financially. And when he ran Taurus, I predicted for him that he would have major windfall gains. He started a business with some partners that has really taken off. Worldwide enterprise, software firm, and growing in leaps and bounds. And as he put it, he started making more money than he ever thought possible during his Taurus Mahadasha. All of this can just be easily seen. We're just focusing on this one aspect, easily seen about how pronounced the 11th house from there and how favorable it becomes. So when he runs Taurus, both period and subperiod are emphasizing this patterning, and he sees the fruit of this. But then he wanted to discuss with me his next upcoming period, which would be Aries. So now think about what you've learned so far in terms of interpreting any sign period, and think about the positive potential of Aries, but also what could be also some unfavorable potentials, both of which I predicted to him, both of which has come true. First of all, starting with the favorable. What could be the favorable indication here?
It has exalted AK.
Exalted Sun and Mars in Aries.
So first of all, you'll learn, if you haven't learned already, that when a person runs the period containing the sun, and particularly if the sun is strong in some way, their status, their position in life, their being in positions of leadership and authority, their star is going to shine more during this time. That's number one. That's just based on sun being there as a natural significator of these things and being strong. But now come to special karaka.
Amatikaraka aspects it.
A strong Amatikaraka aspects it.
Yes, its own sign.
So you have a strong AK, you have a strong AMK, and they're forming that AK, AMK Raja Yoga. Now who joins the party?
Saturn.
Saturn. He loses a child? What?
Saturn as a natural malefic, but what is its status in terms of karaka?
Controls children.
PK, we haven't learned this yet, but PK combining with AK and AKMK form Raja Yoga.
Oh, heaven.
So it adds to the PK, Saturn being the PK here, adds to the Raja Yoga. Now let me jump ahead a little bit. You can see that his AK is the sun. Can anybody place it in the Vamsha?
Virgo? No, that's wrong. That's not Virgo.
That's the 12th house. It's
Can anybody place it in the Navamsha? The sun's position is at 27 Aries. It would put it in Sagittarius in the Navamsha.
Gemini?
Sagittarius. Sagittarius becomes the position of the sun in Navamsha. Therefore, the Karakamsha Lagna is Sagittarius. Where do these planets fall? What sign or what house is Aries? Fifth house. One of the things you're going to learn that a combination of the AK with the PK in the fifth house or the first house from Karakamsha Lagna gives not just Raja Yoga but Maharaja Yoga.
Ooh.
Not just Raja Yoga but Maharaja. So this is the favorable side. I told him that your business will expand. You as the main operating officer will become more and more significant in terms of your role and your status. And it'll grow significantly. You'll be the Maharaj, which has come true. But now, what could this period also mean unfavorably? And what?
Problems with children.
There could be problems with children, yes. And you're saying that because?
Because Saturn is debilitated there, being the fifth from the Karakamsha, that indicates problems with children. Also, Saturn is the indicator of children itself, is the character for children.
And it's the 6th house of the chart.
All what you accept, really just seeing the fact that this is the 6th house, and that's where PK is, and there's the additional function of the natural Mars, you could derive that indication. So you've got the PK in the 6th, aspected by Mars, natural malefic. And so that alone. Now, does Saturn get is it truly debilitated or is there cancellation?
Cancellation.
There is cancellation, yeah, because Mars is in Scorpio.
Also, exalted.
The effective cancellation comes from it being with an exalted planet.
Okay.
You have to understand what gives effective cancellation. And one of the more effective ones was with its exalted planet.
Okay.
But now, one of the lessons that we're going to have is on what's called Jaimini Arishta Yogas. Arishta means unfortunate combinations, particularly unfortunate in regards to impacting the body and one's health. Which Karaka represents the first house and therefore the body?
AK.
Atmakaraka.
That's Scorpio.
Atmakaraka. Atmakaraka represents the first house and therefore the body in the Jaimini system. Here, it's falling in the 6th house. And it's also under the influence of what? Two natural. So he's running the major period of the 6th house.
Wow.
Contains 8K, like unto the first Lord, and with two malefic influences. What could it mean?
Illnesses.
What could it mean? Health problems, which he has had, which I cautioned him about, and made some recommendations, which he didn't follow. He is now. So do you see how this period shows both a tremendous potential to give him Raja Yoga rise in life, status, success, but also dangerous period for his health, both. As Raja Yoga combinations, Mars, Saturn, and the Sun form a terrific Raja Yoga combination. But as an Arishta Yoga, they form a bad Arishta Yoga as well because it's the A and K and the 6 under the influence of the two worst malefics. So Mars and Saturn have both a good role to play and a bad role to play. Do you see?
Yeah.
Is it clear? Question?
Yeah.
So, Mark, the combination of Rahu, Moon, and Venus in the 5th, what does that signify? Is that it's in the 5th is with an exalted Venus is there, but
Well, you know, again, every combination can have a lot of different meanings. What does it mean in terms of his education? What does it mean in terms of his karma with children? What does it mean in terms of his practice of mantra? You know, you have to look at it from a number of different standpoints. First of all, you know, it's got its favorable side, but it's got an unfavorable side as well. Because, you know, because it's a mixed bag, a mixed picture. So, you know, we can't just say it just means one thing. You have to reason about it based on the principles that I'm giving.
Could you say that because the moon is there in the Karaka of mother, it would be, so it has some Raja Yogas there because of moon and Venus from a Parashara perspective. But the combination of Rahu, Moon, Venus may not be so good from a mother perspective. The Karaka of moon, the Karaka of mother as moon.
Well, you know, if you're talking from the Parashi point of view, because remember from the Jaini point of view, if we're going to be looking at mother, we are looking at the natural significator moon, but then we're also looking at Mercury, right? MK. And we're looking at the fourth house, fourth lord from Karakamsha Lagna. So it's, you know, it's a multivariate analysis. I wouldn't just make my assessment just based on the condition of the moon. And the moon here is with Rahu, but it's also with the two best benefics. It's in Jupiter's sign aspected by Jupiter. Rahu is the disturbing influence here, yes, but actually the favorableness side of it is greater in terms of influences. Now, it's a dark waning moon. It's nearly an Amavasya moon, right? So you have to, you know, everybody is, in astrology, people are looking for like what Kay and Raj used to call push button interpretation. You push this button and that's the interpretation. It's never like that. You know, Prashna Horse says ua pua patu, meaning the skill of the astrologers to be able to weigh up the different influences and make a fine judgment based on those different influences. And that's what your practice is doing. That's what I'm trying to demonstrate. See it from different sides. What's the best thing this combination can mean? What's the worst thing that this combination can mean? Consider both.
I have a question. Could we say that if moon, which is the natural karaka as a mother, becomes the dara karaka, he gets the motherly affection as well from the wife? Could we interpret something like that?
No, well, no, I wouldn't. That wouldn't be a line of thinking that I would. It wouldn't be a way in which I would think about it. No.
Okay, so if Saturn is the putra karaka, we can't say that he would have problems with the children.
Well, not just because it's Saturn. The fact that it's in the 6th house and it's aspected by Mars, then we start to see some difficult karmas with children.
Okay.
And what it is that he's been separated with them a lot because he's traveling all over the world all the time. He's separated from them, you know, probably 90% of the time.
Mark, regarding the Saturn debilitated here, I know that it's cancelled doubly because of the sun being exalted, but do you treat it differently from Parashara system in which if there is a cancellation, that's it? You know, Saturn is no longer debilitated, whereas in Parashara, you know, even though there is a cancellation, Saturn will give problems.
No, it's the same. It's the same. All the cancellation means is that it loses its ability to break the yoga. Right? It won't break the yoga. It'll give the results of the yoga. But still, Saturn, any debilitated planet, even with cancellation, is still, you know, in terms of its natural significations, in terms of its lordship, it's a problem.
Okay, won't break the yoga.
Okay. But
so with Jaimini, Mark, you're looking at the Karaka, which is the moon. You're also looking at the MK. Which one takes precedence, or do you look at?
What you're looking for is confluence. You know, if they're contrasting, it means that, you know, it's more of a mixed picture. What you're looking for. So, for example, if you know, if from the Parashi point of view, you've got a Dushkriti yoga, the Lord of the Seventh in a Dushtana aspected by a malefic, and then additionally, The Darakaraka is in a Dushtana and afflicted by malefics. You've got a confluent picture that's showing that karma in one's relationship life is going to be problematic. If the picture is contrasting, which it sometimes is, it just means it's mixed more. And then you have a confluent picture where everything's favorable. But you keep the you don't mix the systems in the sense that you apply parashara principles to Jami Karakas and Jami Karaka principles to parashara. You don't. You have to divide it in your head, but then you look at both to see, if you're getting a picture that's either confluent, contrasting. The confluent ones are the most easy to then be certain about predicting. And I'll show
So
you.
can you say that if there's confluence, then it's fixed karma, versus if there's no confluence, then if it's mixed, it could be something that's changeable?
Yes. The answer is yes. So the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Well, let's go on here, because there's more I want to cover here. We're rapidly running out of time.
7 minutes.
So, here's another chart that I just very recently made a prediction on. And I want to just use an example to kind of show this idea of using Diamond in connection with the Parashara system in order to make predictions. I need to get out of this screen here, go into another important chart in order to show this. So I know many of you are looking at North Indian style charts, so let me bring up a North Indian style chart. And I'll give you degrees. Now, everyone should look at the screen. The lower left corner, the karakas are not marked in the charts, but in a table at the lower left, you'll see the planets listed, and next to them you see the abbreviations for karakas, and they're going to show you which planets are which karakas. Can you confirm that you're seeing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this person is running his, and I want to show you the D4 chart here. Someone was asking about, divisional charts and how these come into play. I'm about to show you that. So this person is running their Aquarius major period. Now, who are the natural significators of home, residence, and land? Who are the natural significators of home, residence, and land?
Mars.
2 planets.
Moon and Venus.
Moon and Mars. Moon for residence, home, and Mars for real estate. Mars is Bhumi Sutra, Lord of Lands. Okay. This person is running his Aquarius period. What do you see? Use Aquarius as a lagna, dasha lagna. What happens?
Mars aspect.
Exalted moon.
What happens to the 4th house from there?
Exalted.
Exalted
they
moon.
aspect. Moon and Mars aspect.
They do, and so the 4th house from Aquarius has the moon exalted and Mars aspecting it as well. Does everybody follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Now he's running his Aquarius period, which special Jaimith Karaka would signify things like home, property, and real estate.
Machika.
MK. MK. Who's the MK in his chart?
Sun.
What good things are happening to the sun here? Well, first of all, what's the sun? What's the
With
sun?
benefics.
In its own house.
Own house.
With 2 benefics.
With 2 benefics, if you see its degrees and you know how to calculate its Navamsa position, you'll know that its sun's also not just in the sign, but Bhargotama.
No.
Now, what spoils this picture? The sun is strong, MK.
Oh, Mars. Mars aspects that.
No, there's something else that spoils the picture more.
Malefic flanking.
Hemming of
Oh,
malefics.
hemming. Oh.
Oh, hemming. Yeah, malefic moon. Yeah.
Malefic hemming. Set Rahu on one side, Saturn on the other.
That's true.
Just again, sorry, I didn't understand that. What other thing spoils the sun?
It spoils everything in Leo. You've got Rahu, a natural malefic on one side, Saturn, it's malefic hemming. You understand hemming?
Oh yeah, okay, I understand. It's hemmed. Okay, I understand. Hemmed to malefics, yeah.
Okay. But still, and so he's running his Aquarius period. Now look at, can everybody see D4, the divisional chart having to do with fixed assets, property, real estate? Does everybody see those charts in the lower right corner?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Put your focus in on Aquarius. Which karakas does it contain?
Oh boy.
MK.
MK and BK.
Contains the MK. So he's running the major period of a period that looks like it could give property in the birth chart. From Dasha Lagna, we have an exalted moon, natural significator of home, aspected by Mars, natural significator of property. Is everybody following me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in D4, he's running Aquarius containing his MK. Now he's coming to the sub-period of Leo, coming up here at the end of 2018, beginning 2019. Go back to the Rashi. Where's the MK?
In Leo.
Leo.
Leo. Strong with those two benefics.
Yeah.
So I have predicted that it's during this period that he will acquire property. He was asking me this question.
D4 has moon there, which is again the Karaka for.
It does. Now in the Jaimini system, in the Parashara system, because I'm the composite technique type of astrologer, he was running Jupiter major period, just recently moved into it, got an inheritance when his father died. How does a Jupiter Mahadasha from the Parashara point of view show inheritance? Money through inheritance.
8th house.
8th house.
8th house.
It's the 8th Lord, that shows the inheritance, but how come he gets a rather substantial one, financial windfall?
With 11th Lord Mercury and second
Jupiter
Lord.
is the 5th Lord, Lakshmi Sthana. Mercury is the 11th Lord, both of them getting directional strength in the first house. Another Lord of a trine Sun. It's a Dhan Yoga. It's a combination for wealth, but of course it gets reduced because of the hemming. But Jupiter shows the gains from inheritance. Gains from inheritance.
Jupiter is a maraca. He's the AMK that's a maraca.
What?
Jupiter is a maraca.
Who?
Jupiter.
Who?
Jupiter is a maraca. It's an AMK, so therefore is a maraca.
No. You're mixing systems, number one. The Maraka in the Jaimini system is the DK, like unto the 7th Lord. And, Jupiter is not a primary Maraka for this Lagna. The primary Marakas would be Lord of 7th and 7th in the Parashara system. I'm sorry, you must be confused. AMK has nothing to do with Maraka. And right now we're focused on, maybe confusing people because I'm switching systems. I'm saying he's running his Jupiter Mahadasha in Vimshotri. We're focused on Parashari Jyotish now. And we're seeing how Jupiter brought gains through inheritance. Let's see that from Chandra Lagna, the moon, use moon as a Lagna, see that Jupiter goes into the 4th house with the 4th Lord. It makes it eligible for bringing property. Now see D4 and see how Jupiter is in the Lagna of D4. Such a planet in the Lagna of any divisional chart has to bring strongly the results of that division. Particularly here, it says Jupiter is involved in exchange with the Lagna Lord Venus. Gets directional strength and also strength from the Parivartana Yoga.
Yeah. Jupiter is the 8th Lord of inheritance, and it's on the ascendant on the D4.
Well, that could come into play here. I'm just saying that Jupiter Mahadasha has to bring in property. Excuse me. So anyway, on the basis of this and some sub-period in Vimshotri and the Jaimini system, I predicted that he'll get property. He then told me that his intention is to buy property at the end of this year, beginning of next.
Wow.
Once his inheritance comes through.
So, Mark, can we look at confluence from Jaimini about inheritance? Like, how would you see that?
We can, but we haven't learned enough to do that. So we'll hold that thought. Remember, this is the second lesson. we have lots more lessons to do. We have to learn to walk before we can fly, in other words. But we'll get there. So this is the first two. This webinar counts for 2 webinars. We will now be having 1 webinar each week. As we continue on here, I'll be sending out the 3rd lesson, which is a very important lesson because it's about Jaimini Raja Yogas, how to identify Jaimini Raja Yogas, how to qualify Jaimini Raja Yogas. And again, this is where the concept of Argala will come strongly into play in terms of enhancing and additionally qualifying Jaimini Raja Yogas. But before we conclude, I'll take any final questions on material that we covered today, if there are.
You were talking about the degrees, how to calculate it in the Navamsha. Would you?
Right. I'll send you a document that will teach you how to do that.
Thank you.
It looks like magic if you don't understand how you do it, but once you understand how you do it, it's not magic. It's actually quite simple.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Could we get some of the sample charts that we looked at today? I'd like to go back and kind of do the exercises as we did them in class today.
Yes, I can give you that. Remember, you're going to get a recording.
Okay.
And in the recording, all the charts are displayed. And in the middle of the chart, well, I guess just with the celebrities, you'll see the birth data. But yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Mark, how to see the potential in a chart by Jaimini astrology? I mean, the promise in a chart, childbirth or whatever marriage.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting.
How to see the potential in a chart through Jaimini astrology?
For what?
Childbirth is promise or not?
Oh well, we're going to have a whole lesson on childbirth. We're going to have a whole lesson on marriage. Okay. So
okay.
Stay tuned. Again, this is lesson number 2. I can't teach you everything in 2 lessons.
Okay.
These topics are going to be very thoroughly covered. So, just to give you a preliminary answer, obviously, when you're evaluating one's karma with children, you're going to do it in a certain way from the Vimshotri point of view. From the Jaimini point of view, you're mostly evaluating the PK, right? Its overall condition, disposition, placement, both in the birth chart and in Saptamsha, as we'll see, right? But then I would also be examining 5th house, 5th lord from the Karakamsha line.
Okay,
but
thank you.
We're getting way ahead of ourselves here. As I said, any questions related to today's material before we conclude? All right, we always end with a prayer. We start with a prayer and end with prayer, so that's what we'll do now. Om Masato Masa Gamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya, Nichum Ma Vitam Gamaya, Sarvesham Swasti Bhavatu, Sarvesham Shanti Bhavatu, Sarvesham Puram Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, Om Shanti, 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. First of all, I want to thank everyone for your very active participation. This is just the kind of classroom we want to have. I hope we had fun. Yep. I never like to do anything unless I'm having fun. Right? So we want to have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
That's great.
We'll pick it up next week. Within the next 24 hours, you'll get the recording and your next lesson. Right?
Awesome.
So stay tuned for that. Bye for now. Namaste.
Bye.